All right, we're back. We're going to pick up and read the rest of chapter 2. Marmeladov is in the middle of his story about his daughter just distressed at the children crying, Katerina Ivanova, his wife, her stepmother, accusing her of doing nothing but just taking resources from the family and providing nothing. Sonya leaves quietly, comes back 3 hours later with 30 rubles, lays them on the table, and goes in her bed and cries. And Marmeladov says, and I laid there drunk. And it says, Marmeladov stopped short, as though his voice had failed him. Then he hurriedly filled his glass, drank, and cleared his throat. Since then, sir, he went on after a brief pause, since then, owing to an unfortunate occurrence and through information given by evil-intentioned persons, in all which Darya Frantsevna took a leading part on the pretext that she had been treated with want of respect. Since then, my daughter, Sofya Semyonovna, has been forced to take a yellow ticket, and owing to that she is unable to go on living with us. And for our landlady, Amalia Fyodorovna, would not hear of it, though she had backed up Darya Frantsevna before, and Mr. Lippewechsel too. All the trouble between him and Katerina Ivanova was on Sonya's account. At first he was for making up to Sonya himself, and then all of a sudden he stood on his dignity. How, said he, can a highly educated man like me live in the same rooms with a girl like that? And Katerina Ivanova would not let it pass, and she stood up for her, and so that's how it happened. And Sonya comes to us now, mostly after dark. She comforts Katerina Ivanova and gives her all she can. She has a room at the Kapernamovs, the tailors. She lodges with them. Kapernaumov is a lame man with a cleft palate, and all of his numerous family have cleft palates too. And his wife, too, has a cleft palate. They all live in one room, but Sonya has her own, partitioned off. Yes, very poor people, and all with cleft palates, yes. Then I got up in the morning, I put on my rags, lifted my hands to heaven, and set off to His Excellency, Ivan Athanasyevich. His Excellency, Ivan Athanasyevich. Do you know him? No. Well, then it's a man of God you do not know. He is wax, wax before the face of the Lord. Even wax melteth. His eyes were dim when he heard my story. Marmeladov, once already you have deceived my expectations. I'll take you once more on my own responsibility. That's what he said. Remember, he said, and now you can go. I kissed the dust at his feet, in thought only, for in reality he would not have allowed me to do it, being a statesman and a man of modern political and enlightened ideas. I returned home, and when I announced that I'd been taken back into the service and should receive a salary, heavens, what a to-do there was. Marmeladov stopped again in violent excitement. At that moment, a whole party of revelers, already drunk, came in from the street, and the sounds of a hired concertina and the cracking, piping voice of a child of 7 singing the Hamlet were heard in the entry. The room was filled with noise. The tavern keeper and the boys were busy with the newcomers. Marmeladov, paying no attention to the new arrivals, continued his story. He appeared by now to be extremely weak, but as he became more and more drunk, he became more and more talkative. The recollection of his recent success in getting the situation seemed to revive him, and he was positively reflected in a sort of radiance on his face. Raskolnikov listened intently. That was 5 weeks ago, sir. Yes, as soon as Katerina Ivanova and Sonya heard of it, mercy on us, it was as though I stepped into the kingdom of heaven. It used to be, you can lie like a beast, nothing but abuse. But they were talking on tiptoe, hushing the children. Semyon Zakharovich is tired with his work at the office. He's resting. Shh. They made me coffee before I went to work and boiled cream for me. They began to get real cream for me. Do you hear that? And how they managed to get together the money for a decent outfit. 11 rubles, 50 kopecks, I cannot guess. Boots, cotton shirt fronts, most magnificent. A uniform. They got up all in splendid style for 11 rubles and a half. The first morning I came back from the office, I found Katerina Ivanova had cooked 2 courses for dinner, soup and salt meat with horseradish, which we had never dreamed of till then. She had not any dresses, none at all, But she got herself up as though she were going on a visit, and not that she'd anything to do with. She smartened herself up with nothing at all. She'd done her hair nicely, put on a clean collar of some sort, cuffs, and there she was, quite a different person. She was younger and better looking. Sonya, my little darling, had only helped with money, for the time, she said. It won't do for me to come and see you too often. After dark, maybe, when no one can see. Do you hear? Do you hear? I lay down for a nap after dinner, and what do you think? Though Katerina Ivanova had quarreled to the last degree with our landlady, Amalia Fyodorova, only a week before, she could not resist then asking her into coffee. For 2 hours they were sitting, whispering together. Semyon Zakharovich is in the service again, now and receiving a salary, she says. And he went himself to His Excellency, and His Excellency himself came out to him, made all the others wait, and led Semyon Zakharovich by the hand before everybody into his study. Do you hear? To be sure, says he. Semyon Zakharovich, remembering your past services, says he, and in spite of your propensity to that foolish weakness, since you promise now, and since moreover we've got on badly without you. And so he says, I rely on your word as a gentleman, and all that. Let me tell you, she has simply made up for herself, and not simply out of wantonness, for the sake of bragging. No, she believes it all herself. She amuses herself with her own fancies. Upon my word she does. And I don't blame her for it. No, I don't blame her. 6 days ago, when I brought her my first earnings in full, 23 rubles 40 kopecks altogether, she called me her poppet. Poppet, she said, my little poppet. And when we were by ourselves, you understand. You would not think me a beauty. You would not think much of me as a husband, would you? Well, she pinched my cheek. My little poppet, she said. Marmeladov broke off, tried to smile, but suddenly his chin began to twitch. He controlled himself, however. The tavern, the degraded appearance of the man, the 5 nights in the hay barge and the pot of spirits, and yet this poignant love for his wife and children bewildered his listener. Raskolnikov listened intently, but with a sick sensation. He felt vexed that he had come here. Honored sir, cried Marmeladov, recovering himself. Oh, sir, perhaps all this seems a laughing matter to you, as it does to others, and perhaps I am only worrying you with the stupidity of all the trivial details of my home life. But it's not a laughing matter to me, for I can feel it all. And the whole of that heavenly day of my life, and the whole of that evening I passed in fleeting dreams of how I would arrange it all, how I would dress all the children, how I should give her rest, and how I should rescue my own daughter from dishonor and restore her to the bosom of her family. And a great deal more. Quite excusable, sir. Well then, sir. Marmeladov suddenly gave a sort of start, raised his head, and gazed intently at his listener. Well, the very next day after all those dreams, that is to say exactly 5 days ago, in the evening, by a cunning trick, like a thief in the night, I stole from Katerina Ivanova the key of her box, took out what was left of my earnings. How much it was I have forgotten. And now look at me, all of you. It's the 5th day since I left home, and they are looking for me there. And it's the end of my employment, and my uniform is laying in a tavern on the Egyptian bridge. I exchanged it for the garments I have on, and it's the end of everything. Marmeladov struck his forehead with his fist, clenched his teeth, closed his eyes, and leaned heavily with his elbow on the table. But a minute later his face suddenly changed, and with a certain assuming slyness and an affectation of bravado, he glanced at Raskolnikov, laughed, and said, This morning I went to see Sonya. I went to her, asked her for a pick-me-up. You don't say she gave it to you, cried one of the newcomers. He shouted the words and went into a guffaw. This very court was bought with her money, Marmeladov declared, addressing himself exclusively to Raskolnikov. 30 kopecks she gave me with her own hands, her last, all she had, as I saw. She said nothing, she only looked at me without a word. Not on earth, but up yonder. They grieve over men, they weep, but they don't blame them. They don't blame them. But it hurts more when they don't blame. 30 kopecks, yes, and maybe she needs them now. What do you think, my dear sir? For now she's got to keep up her appearance. It costs money, that smartness, that special smartness, you know. Do you understand? There's pomatum, too, you see, and she must have things, petticoats, starched ones, shoes, too, real jaunty ones to show off her foot when she has to step over a puddle. Do you understand, sir? Do you understand what all that smartness means? And here I, her own father, here I took 30 kopecks of that money for a drink, and I am drinking it, and I have already drunk it. Come, who will have pity on a man like me, eh? Are you sorry for me, sir, or not? Tell me, sir, are you sorry or not? He would have filled his glass, but there was no drink left. The pot was empty. What are you to be pitied for? Shouted the tavern keeper, who was again near them. Shouts of laughter and even oaths followed. The laughter and the oaths came from those who were listening and also from those who had heard nothing, but were simply looking at the figure of the discharged government clerk. To be pitied? Why am I to be pitied? Marmeladov suddenly declaimed, standing up with his arms outstretched as though he had been only waiting for that question. Why am I to be pitied, you say? Yes. There's nothing to pity for me. I ought to be crucified on a cross, not pitied. Crucify me, O judge, crucify me, but pity me. And then I will go of myself to be crucified, for it is not merrymaking I seek, but tears and tribulation. Do you suppose, you that sell this pint of yours, has been so sweet to me? It was tribulation I sought at the bottom of it, tears and tribulation. I have found it, and I have tasted it. But he will pity us, who has had pity on all men, who has understood all men and all things. He is the one. He too is the judge. He will come in that day, and he will ask, where is the daughter who gave herself for her cross, consumptive stepmother, and for the little children of another? Where is the daughter who had pity on the filthy drunkard, her earthly father undismayed by his beastliness? And he will say, come to me. I have already forgiven thee once. I have forgiven thee once. Thy sins, which are many, are forgiven thee, for thou hast loved much. And he will forgive, my Sonya. He will forgive, I know it. I felt it in my heart when I was with her just now. And he will judge and will forgive all, the good and the evil, the wise and the meek. And when he has done with all of them, and he will summon us, you too come forth, he will say, come forth, ye drunkards, come forth, ye weak ones, come forth, ye children of shame. And we shall all come forth without shame, and shall stand before him, and he will say to us, ye are swine, made in the image of the beast and with his mark, but come ye also. And the wise ones and those of understanding will say, O Lord, why dost thou receive these men? And he will say, this is why I receive them, O ye wise. This is why I receive them, O ye of understanding, that not one of them believed himself to be worthy of this. And he will hold out his hands to us, and we shall fall down before him, and we shall weep, and we shall understand all things. And we shall understand all, and all will understand. Katerina Ivanova even, she will understand. Lord, thy kingdom come. And he sank down on the bench, exhausted and helpless, looking at no one, apparently oblivious of his surroundings and plunged in deep thought. His words had created a certain impression. There was again a moment of silence, but soon laughter and oaths were heard. That's his notion. Talked himself silly. A fine clerk he is. And so on and so on. Let us go, sir, said Marmeladov all at once, raising his head and addressing Raskolnikov. Come along with me. Kozel's house, looking into the yard. I'm going to Katerina Ivanova. Time I did. Raskolnikov had for some time been wanting to go, and he had meant to help him. Marmeladov was much unsteadier on his legs than in his speech, and leaned heavily on the young man. They had 200 or 300 paces to go. The drunken man was more and more overcome by dismay and confusion as they drew nearer the house. It's not Katerina Ivanova I'm afraid of now, he muttered in agitation, and that she will begin pulling my hair. What does my hair matter? Bother my hair. That's what I need. Indeed, it will be better if she does begin pulling it. That's not what I'm afraid of. It's her eyes I'm afraid of. Yes, her eyes. The red on her cheeks, too, frightens me, and her breathing, too. Have you noticed how people in that disease breathe when they are excited? I'm frightened of the children's crying, too. For if Sonya has not taken them food, I don't know what's happened. I don't know. But blows I'm not afraid of. Know, sir, that such blows are not a pain to me, but even an enjoyment. In fact, I can't get on without it. It's better so. Let her strike me. It relieves her heart. It's better so. There is the house of Kozel, the cabinet maker, a German, well-to-do. Lead the way. They went in from the yard and up to the fourth story. The staircase got darker and darker as they went up. It was nearly 11 o'clock, and although in summer in Petersburg there is no real night, yet it was quite dark at the top of the stairs. A grim little door at the very top of the stairs stood ajar. A very poor-looking woman, about 10 paces long, was lighted up by a candle end. The whole of it was visible from the entrance. It was all in disorder, littered up with rags of all sorts, especially children's garments. Across the furthest corner was stretched a ragged sheet. Behind it, probably, was a bed. There was nothing in the room except 2 chairs and a sofa covered with American leather, full of holes, before which stood an old deal kitchen table, unpainted and uncovered. At the end of the table stood a smoldering tallow candle in an iron candlestick. It appeared that the family had a room to themselves, not part of a room, but their room was practically a passage. The door leading to the other rooms, or rather cupboards into which Amalia Lippewecsel's flat was divided, stood half open, and there was shouting, uproar, and laughter within. People seemed to be playing cards and drinking tea there. Words of the most unceremonious kind flew out from time to time. Raskolnikov recognized Katerina Ivanova at once. She was a rather tall, slim, and graceful woman, terribly emaciated, with magnificent dark brown hair and with a hectic flush in her cheeks. She was pacing up and down in her little room, pressing her hands against her chest. Her lips were parched, and her breathing came in nervous, broken gasps. Her eyes glittered as in fever, and looked about with harsh, immovable stare. And that consumptive and excited face with the last flickering light of the candle end playing upon it made a sickening impression. She seemed to Raskolnikov about 30 years old, and was certainly a strange wife for Marmeladov. She had not heard them and did not notice them coming in. She seemed to be lost in thought, hearing and seeing nothing. The room was close, but she had not opened the window. A stench rose from the staircase, but the door onto the stairs was not closed. From the inner rooms, clouds of tobacco smoke floated in. She kept coughing, but did not close the door. The youngest child, a girl of 6, was asleep, sitting curled up on the floor with her head on the sofa. A boy, a year older, stood crying and shaking in the corner. Probably he had just had a beating. Beside him stood a girl of 9 years old, tall and thin, wearing a thin and ragged chemise with an ancient cashmere pelisse flung over her bare shoulders, long outgrown and barely reaching her knees. Her arm, as thin as a stick, was round her brother's neck. She was trying to comfort him, whispering something to him and doing all she could to keep him from whimpering again. At the same time, her large dark eyes, which looked larger still from the thinness of her frightened face, were watching her mother with alarm. Marmeladov did not enter the door, but dropped on his knees in the very doorway, pushing Raskolnikov in front of him. The woman, seeing a stranger, stopped indifferently facing him, coming to herself for a moment and apparently wondering what he had come for. But evidently she decided that he was going into the next room, as he had to pass through hers to get there. Taking no further notice of him, she walked toward the outer door to close it and uttered a sudden scream on seeing her husband on his knees in the doorway. "Ah!" she cried out in a frenzy. "He has come back! The criminal! The monster! And where is the money? What's in your pocket? Show me. And your clothes are all different. Where are your clothes? Where is the money? Speak!" And she fell to searching him. Marmeladov submissively and obediently held up both arms to facilitate the search. Not a farthing was there. "Where is the money?" she cried. "Mercy on us, can he have drunk it all? There were 12 silver rubles left in the chest." And in a fury she seized him by the hair and dragged him into the room. Marmeladov seconded her efforts by meekly crawling along on his knees. "And this is a consolation to me. This does not hurt me, but is a positive consolation, honored sir," he called out, shaken to and fro by his hair and even once striking the ground with his forehead. The child asleep on the floor woke up and began to cry. The boy in the corner, losing all control, began trembling and screaming and rushing to his sister in violent terror, almost in a fit. The eldest girl was shaking like a leaf. He's drunk it. He's drunk it all, the poor woman screamed in despair, and his clothes are gone, and they are hungry, hungry. And wringing her hand, she pointed to the children. Oh, accursed life, and you, are you not ashamed? She pounced all at once upon Raskolnikov. From the tavern? Have you been drinking with him? Have you been drinking with him too? Go away. The young man was hastening away without uttering a word. The inner door was thrown wide open, and inquisitive faces were peeping in at it. Coarse, laughing faces with pipes and cigarettes and heads wearing caps thrust themselves in at the doorway. Further in could be seen figures in dressing gowns flung open, in costumes of unseemly scantiliness, some of them with cards in their hands. They were particularly diverted when Marmeladov, dragged about by his hair, shouted that it was a consolation to him. They even began to come into the room. At last, a sinister, shrill outcry was heard. This came from Amalia Lippewechsel herself, pushing her way amongst them and trying to restore order, after her own fashion and for the 100th time, to frighten the poor woman by ordering her, with coarse abuse, to clear out of the room the next day. As he went out, Raskolnikov had time to put his hand into his pocket, to snatch up the coppers he had received in exchange for his rouble in the tavern, and to lay them unnoticed on the window. Afterwards, on the stairs, he changed his mind and would have gone back. What a stupid thing I have done, he thought to himself. They have Sonya, and I want it myself. But reflecting that it would be impossible to take it back now, and that in any case he would not have taken it, he dismissed it with a wave of his hand and went back to his lodging. Sonya wants pomatum, too, he said as he was walking along the street, and he laughed malignantly. Such smartness costs money. And maybe Sonya herself will be bankrupt today, for there is always a risk. Hunting big game, digging for gold. Then they would all be without a crust tomorrow except for my money. Hurrah for Sonya. What a mine they've dug there. And they're making the most of it. Yes, they're making the most of it. They've wept over it and grown used to it. Man grows used to everything, the scoundrel. And he sank into thought. And what if I am wrong? He cried suddenly after a moment's thought. What if man is really not a scoundrel? Man in general, I mean. The whole race of mankind. Then all the rest is prejudice, simply artificial terrors, and there are no barriers, and it's all as it should be. That's the end of chapter 2. Join me in the next video, and we will have a discussion over the second half of chapter 2. See you there.